Hey everyone, welcome back to building a directory listing builder. Today I'm going to implement the backend for managing directories, categories, attributes, listings, category options, attribute options, and implement the UI for that. But for the backend, to get all the auto-generated routes, I'm going to use the entity builder. I can go the custom database models route, but you'll see that testing with the entity builder has its perks, although it also has its drawbacks. Like for example, I'm gonna filter the listings after I retrieve all the directory listings instead of filtering by database fields. So that's one drawback. And the other one is that you have to manually map the row value with details from the entity builder rows to custom DTOs. But I will try to abstract as much as I can the implementation from the entity builder. So down the road, you can implement your own database models and custom routes for creating, updating, deleting, and listing all the entities that I said, directories, categories, and all the other four. So let's start. But before, SaasRock is launching on Product Hunt after 2 years of working on it. So you can click notify me at producthunt.com/products/SaasRock to get a 50% discount on launch day. So where were we on the implementation of the directory builder? I think the last part that we did is clicking these items and having this filtered correctly. So if I select remix and svelte, it's empty. Remix and React, I get SaasRock. Without any filters, I get all the listings. So it's working. Now, I think the first thing that I need to do is actually start creating the entities so I can create directories as a tenant. So that's step number one. Go into admin entities and start mapping all of my entities. The first one is directories. So the name is directory and the slug is directories. Now for the directories, let's see what the listing DTOs, the directory DTOs have. Title, description, slug, image, and logo. Okay. Title, required. Description, required. Slug, also required. Background, image. This may be of type media instead of text, so the user can drop images, and minimum of 1 and maximum of 1, and I can also set the types here, like this can be images. I think this works with an asterisk. And then logo will be also a media, but this will be not required, and maximum of 1. Also images only. And what else? And that's it. Now we can create the categories entity or category entity. Category slug categories, and similarly to the directory, it has a name and a value. First the name and then the value, and whether it's the default one or not. At least one is required, is default, and this is Boolean. All of them are required. Now, what else? The relationships between directory and directory category, we can add them right now or at the end. I think it's better at the end. Now, directory attributes. So we need an attribute entity, attributes. And actually, attributes are dynamic. So I want my tenants to create their custom properties. So I'm not going to add any on this entity. It will be dynamic for each tenant. And then what else? Then we have the listing. listing, the slug is listings, and the properties are, I think, title, description, and slug. Title, description, and slug, all of them required. Now, we should have these categories and attributes values from the categories and attributes entities, but we need like a bridge between the parent and the child. So we need a category item or option, category value. I want to call it item. Category items. The prefix is already taken by category, so I'm gonna rename it to category item. And here, let's see, we have a category item. Well, I call it here options, but it can have name, value, and order. Name, value, and order is of type number. Order. And similarly to the attributes, well, but the attributes are actually the rows itself, the properties. So for that, I'm not going to use a bridge. You'll see that later on the implementation. So I can start with this. Now I need to set the relationships. For example, directories are parents of categories and also of attributes. Yeah, attributes. No, but I think the attributes is the actual entity. So maybe just the listing. Directory is parent of categories and listings. Now, going to the next one, categories are parents of category items, which are the options. For example, category is framework and category item is remix. And going to the next one, listings have a relationship as parents for the category item, which is the value representing, for example, SaasRock is the listing and the category item will be remix. So it will be a child related. And I think that's it. Let me see if listing is parent of another entity. I don't think so. So I think that's it. Now, I'm going to the directory route. And here, I'm using fake directories, but I don't want that anymore. I need to get the actual directory from the rows that the tenant creates. Let me show you. If I go to, oh, by the way, and the application is now called Directcraft instead of just directory listing builder. It's a name that I found that it kind of works for this. Similar to the previous example, indexer, where it was a Google page indexer, and I gave it this name. For the directory listing builder is Directcraft. Now, as a tenant, I have all the entities that I can create. Let's create one directory. And I'm going to the existing one to copy paste. So this is the title. Let's copy the description, and the slug is on the URL. And for the backend image, I have it, I think, in my downloads. Since I can no longer set text, the users need to upload their images. So this is the image that I'm using. And the categories, let's create framework. And the value is framework in lowercase. This is the default category. And let's add some category items like remix, order one, and another one called svelte kit, svelte-kit, order 2. Select these two category items, and save this framework category. We can add the second one, which is language. This is not the default, and let's create React.js, and React is the value, order 1, and svelte is the language, and svelte is in lowercase is the value of the language. And now we can select svelte and React for language category. Now let's select these two categories for the best SaaS boilerplates directory. Now we can save this. Now we need to use this instead of the fake directory here. So how do we access that from the rows implementation of the entity builder? We have this function called rows API. Let's import it, and we're gonna find the row on the entity with name directory, and we're gonna search, and let's search for the properties where the slug is the params, not slug, it's directory, and this should have a value. This shouldn't be named slug. It's where I think it's name, where slug, it has value of this directory, slug. Now, item from the rows API is not the DTO. We need to convert that. So this should be called row, and we should have directory utils file. Where is my module? Here on my directory listings module, on the utils folder, I'm gonna create directory utils file, and I'm gonna export row to DTO, which it's part of the drawbacks of using the entity builder, but I think it's better if I use DTOs. So like I said, you can change to custom database implementations later. So this should be translated into a directory DTO, which contains the slug. Well, but if I try to access the row values from the row with details database model, you'll find that it's pretty uncomfortable. Like I have property ID, but I don't know the ID of slug. And if I want to access the actual value of the slug, it will be text value. Otherwise, number value or date value and all that. So for that, I created this abstraction called row models, where I can convert my row with details to a row model object, passing the row. And then with the model, I can access the property values. For example, get text, because I know slug is text, and this could be undefined, but I know I created the property as required. So I'm gonna put an exclamation mark here. And then the title of the directory, the description, and then the image. And for the image, I could get all the files uploaded, but I know it's only one file. So get first media, and we're gonna get the property called background image, which I called, and we are gonna access the file. Otherwise, it will be empty. Similar for the logo, and now we have our categories. But first, I'm gonna set it like empty, just so I can test it right now. And what else? I think listings, yeah. Now we can return this DTO, and we can log it to see if it's found. Now going back to the directory route, I'm gonna convert the row to a DTO using directory utils, row to DTO. And it should work as before. Well, but first I need to check if the row exists. So instead of having this here, I'm gonna put it at the top and check if the row doesn't exist. Now let's refresh, and going back to the route of the home directory. Invalid category, default category is missing. Yeah, this is an error that we put somewhere here. Invalid category, no, default. No, we put that in the directory home component. And that's not an error. It's just that a directory cannot be published if it has 0 categories. Makes sense. But we need, of course, a better UI for that. So let's create. Well, but I said this category should be. Oh, but I didn't set on directory utils. I didn't set the categories. Yeah. So my model currently is the directory. So I can call this, instead of model, I can call this directory. So I know I'm working with a directory row. And the categories, I want to access the children. So it's get children from the entity called category. And now we can map this and return, let's see, what do I need to return? I think this works. It's default, name, value, and the options are not from the entity called option. It's actually called category item, I think I called it. And we have the order from this option. And let's rename this variable from O to category item because it's no longer option. And this category C to category. So it's better explained. Now I'm gonna refresh this and see if it now works on the end directory. Yeah, so it works. Of course, I'm not getting any listings because I haven't set the listings object. So similar to the categories, we can get all the directory, get children, listing, yeah, just like that. Slug, title, description. Well, but for categories, we're gonna do that in a second. I'm gonna set this empty and the attributes as well empty. And I think we need the image also. And we're gonna get the first media background. No, we don't have an image on this listing. What am I doing? I think this should work. So let's see. But we don't have the category item values set to every listing. I'm gonna do that after I check. I get all the listings. I'm not getting any listings. Why? Well, I didn't create a listing, of course. So as a tenant, I'm gonna create the first listing called SaasRock. It will be named as all-in-one SaaS building framework, and the slug is SaasRock, and the directory is on this one, best SaaS boilerplates. And let's set the category items to be React and Remix. Remix is the framework, React is the language. Now going back, refresh. Now we have the first listing. Before I forget, let's create the other listing called Svelte SaasKit. I'm gonna put this the same on the description, and here Svelte SaasKit. This directory, and let's set the category items to Svelte and SvelteKit. Okay, refreshing the directory, we now have these two. Now, What else do we need? We need to make sure this is filtering correctly, but I currently don't have the listings category items. If I click remix, I don't get anything because I'm not filling this on the listing, this object called categories. So how do I access those categories? Let's look at the entities. On the admin side, let's see the entities. So the listings object contain a relationship to a category item, but actually on my implementation on the DTOs, what I need to retrieve as the listing category, I need to retrieve the category value and then the value of the category itself. So on the category item entity, I don't have that. I mean, we're talking about directory is the level 1, listing is the level 2, category item is the level 3, and from the level 3 we need to retrieve, let's go to category item relationships. We need to go back a level and access the category value. And by default, the rows implementations doesn't go deeper than 3 levels, and the third level doesn't go 1 level upper. But for this example, I can go to my row model helper, and on this object called include child row nested, this is Prisma syntax. I'm accessing the child, which is the directory, and then the other child, which is the listing, and on this child I need to access also the second level that I told you about. So this is a parent row. I'm gonna copy this and put it below values. So this is level 4, but to the top. I'm gonna show you why I need to add this in a second. Going back to the directory utils, I need to iterate the children of categories. So the current listing, I'm gonna get children of type category item, and then I'm going to map this and return just 2 things: the category name, which is not here, it's not on the category item. I need to access the get first parent, which is category, and this can be null, but it shouldn't be null, so I'm just going to check it and access the value, which is of type text. Otherwise, I'm gonna set category not found, just so I know. And the value from the category item is the actual value. So this is correct. Now, refreshing, let's see how it looks on the directory. Now the filtering is working. If I unselect this and select SaasRock, it's now working. So let me comment what I just added here, just so you know what happens if I don't have this from category item to the previous parent, which is category. If I click on a filter, I don't have anything because it cannot access, and let me show you here. If I log my listings somewhere here, listings, item listings, and I'm going to console only the categories, just so you see what it looks like. Okay, but for the categories I need to map the well, instead of having this as an object, I'm gonna put it and log it as is. I think that way it won't put the object string. Yeah, category not found, but the value is found. That's what I mean. So I'm gonna uncomment this so it works. And now we have correctly retrieved the category. This is one of the drawbacks of using the entity builder when you are too deep in the nesting relationships. So now that it's working on the backend, we can test if I rename this directory. Let's see if it works. Number 10. Let's refresh here. So it's working. Now let's change also the description and the slug here. Now, since I changed the slug, it's no longer working, but we shouldn't have this page with this error. That's because the directory component expects, or I mean the directory route expects always an item, and the item is a directory. So loaded data can be that or error, and we're gonna return, before returning the directory, we're gonna check if there's an error in the data. We're gonna retrieve, well, not the error itself. This just basically means that the directory is not found. So page 404 component, which is a component I made, of course, but it's already on the SaasRock codebase. So let's refresh, page not found. And if we access -10, it works. Now I'm gonna rename it back to the original one. Now, what if another tenant creates the same slug? Let me show you. If I go to Acme Corp 2, currently nothing, and go into directories, let's copy paste everything except, instead of 100, 10, I'm gonna put 200, just so I know it's for tenant number 2, and same slug, which is an error that we're going to fix, and the image. So the problem with this is that now I have 2 directories with the same slug. So accessing this, it will retrieve the first one. So since I'm using the entity builder, I can go to the row hooks file and add on before create a validation checking if the current entity is named directory. Let's check the slug that the user is trying to put on raw values, dynamic properties, but it's not property ID. It should be property.name. Now for this name, we're gonna retrieve the text value from this. Well, if this sounds too complicated, remember that you can use the model, new row model. Well, no, not in this case, because on before create, there's no actual row. It's just row values. So yeah, forget what I said. You need to access the dynamic properties, but it's pretty simple if you know it's a text value. Now, we're gonna check if the slug is existing. So we're gonna create existing slugs, and we're gonna call db on row value find many, where the property name is slug and the current entity is named directory. I need to filter the entity as well, because there could be another entity with the property slug, and I don't know the property ID. So we're using names, and we're gonna check if the text value is slug. Now, whenever this response is more than 1, I mean more than 0, we're gonna return directory slug already taken. And yeah, well, we actually need to copy paste or move this function in maybe a directory service file. We need to copy paste it on before update as well, because if the current slug is not existing but then it updates to an existing one, it should throw an error as well, except for when the row ID is not the current updated row ID, not this ID. So let's try. Currently I'm on tenant 2, so if I change it to 200, it works as expected. But if I change it back to the existing one, directory slug already taken. And this is editing. If I try to create with the same slug, SAAS boilerplates, any image, doesn't matter because it won't create it. Directory slug already taken. So now we have the validations set. Going back to the first tenant, I'm gonna rename this to the original one without the 10 at the end. And what else can we do from here? Let me think. We can start working with the filters, which are actually attributes. So what if the tenant, because right now, if you want to add listing attributes, you won't be able to, because one, attributes don't have any property, and two, the listings cannot relate to attributes. So the first thing that we need to do is add the relationship between listings. Listings is parent of attribute, and then we go to settings. Well, but here I cannot add any attribute properties. You need to enable on your app configuration manually and enable this flag, tenant entity customization for tenants. I'm gonna set it to true, and we should have an entities item here. Okay, so as a tenant, I can create my custom attribute properties, and this makes me think that they can create multiple directories. But for example, if they have best SaaS boilerplates, but also another directory called restaurants, the attributes will be shared, and there's no way for me to filter which attributes go where. So let me think what I can do. I think I will fix that at the end, because I could decide that each tenant contains one directory, and it kind of makes sense, because if you access best SaaS boilerplates .com is the directory, so it should be mapped to one directory. But if the tenant is called Acme Corp 1, that's another option that the tenant can set custom domains. But what will be displayed here, it can either be the default directory or a list of all the directories of that tenant. But I think option 1 makes more sense, where each tenant account or each account um, is mapped to one directory. So I'm not going to worry too much about these attribute properties customization. Now, let's see how Airbnb does its filters, which I am calling attributes. They have, for example, type of place, which is a select property type, where you can only select one, and you have options, and it's a radio card group. And then you have price range. This could be added into the SaaS boilerplates. And then this is also a select, yeah, but rendered differently than the first select. These are like cards, and these are like batches. So this is one of the benefits of using the entity builder. I can add custom properties instead of creating them by scratch. If you remember, on the list DTOs, I have this type where it can be text, number, array, and boolean, but I think I should use the predefined property type. And actually, directory attribute is no longer a type that I need, because it will come from the entity called attribute. So I can delete this and delete this here as well. But on the listing attribute here, instead of having a value that is only string, I should support all these types: date, single select, number, text, media, multi-select, multi-text. But instead of creating them by hand, I can do this. Let's set the type, or maybe even the property. Pass down the property to the listing, like this: property with details, and then the value. And the value can be of type row value with details, or null if it's not set. And yeah, let's save this and go back to the directory utils and map. But first let's remove attributes from the directory, because now I need the entity, and actually I need it for adding the attributes. So on the row to DTO function, I need to receive the attribute entity, and this is of type entity with details. And now I can use this attribute with detail entity, these entity properties. I can go iterate the properties and map property and return, what was it called? I think it's called the attribute, and we're gonna put here the attribute name, the property name, and then the type, the property itself, not the type, and then the value. But for here, we need to actually obtain the object called attribute. I'm gonna call this row, that comes from the first child, because one listing contains only one child of type attribute. Get first child of named attribute, and then this can be null, but I have a row model here. Well, I can pass also the row model instead of passing down the values. Like one example will be attribute attribute row. Since this is a model, I can access the row and get the values and find the current property value. and I said this can be null, not undefined. So if it's undefined, I'm gonna set it to null. An attribute can be undefined, so I think that works. Okay, save this. And we have an error because on the directory route, we need to pass the entity on the directory utils function. So first, we need to retrieve attributes entity, await, get entity by name. And since attributes are entities that have dynamic properties depending on the tenant, I need to pass, well, first the entity name attribute, and then without the entity object, and then the tenant ID is from the current row, which is the directory. Now, if there's no attributes entity, we're gonna return an error because there should be one. And here we need to pass that to the utils. And what error do I have here? Yeah, so the listing attributes are no longer simple values. It now contains the attribute and the value object and the property. So I'm gonna use here attribute, and just to render, I'm just going to put stringify just so you can see how it looks. The attribute value, yeah. Let's try it. But we didn't create any property, so let's do that first. Let's start with, I think, we can start with a text. Yeah, let's go for a number range because we can put the price range here, and this is required. And start with that, or well, let's think of a single select. It can be radio group cards. This can be something shared between SaaS boilerplates, which are which contain one option. Could be full stack, and on the options, full stack is the name, and on the options could be with descriptions, front end, back end, or full stack. And here the values are front end in lowercase, back end lowercase, and full stack. Yeah, and I even can even have colors, but I'm not going to use them. So save this and see how it looks. Oh, it can be named like this, so full stack. Okay, so on one listing, I'm gonna update its attributes and create one attribute called, with price range from 149 to 1999. And SaasRock is full stack. And the other one was, well, but I'm with SaasRock right now, so I'm going to save this. And going back to the listings on the Svelte side, I'm gonna edit the attributes to be from 19 to 49. And this is also full stack, but I'm going to put it with backend, just so I have another option, backend. Okay, so back to the home route. Let's refresh here. So now we have the stringified row values, but of course we don't want that. We want to react to specific property types. So we're gonna start with the first two, which is if the attribute property type is of type property type. I know I should have used strings instead of enums, but this is how it is now. Property type number. What was it called? I need my Mac to be faster, and it's not doing it. Property type. Okay, so let's wait for it to autocomplete. Why is it not doing it? Well, let's try with number range. And if it's number range, I'm gonna put a span, otherwise a null, so we can add more in the future. Maybe it's called range number. And here we're gonna put like is range number and put the actual ranges. And this comes from the value and comes from this object range and number min and number max. This is an error because it tries to put decimal object on a React component, so we can put this under a number utils or stringified utils and import this. Maybe decimal format. Attribute value can be type is not assignable to type. Okay, maybe this should be or 0. I mean, maybe this object only receives a number. Yeah, I think I need to parse this number min anyways. So yeah, let's copy paste this. And here, number max. So we need to do the same thing for all the supported property types, which you can see here. Number, text, date, media, select, boolean, multi-select, multi-text, range number, range date, and you can ignore formula. But let's start with this. Let's see how it looks. Okay, is range number, and it's putting the correct ranges, so it's working. Now, for the other one, which is a type of select, I think. I need to pause the video because my Mac is not handling coding and recording at the same time. Let's see for a few moments. If it's of type select, we're gonna put just the text attribute, and instead of select this is a text value always. And here we can remove is range number, and on each one of these we can put the property name first. I mean, property title will look better, or maybe on the cards are not necessary, but we need to add the filters at the right of this layout, so we can click them similar to the categories. So we have ID, folio, created ad, price range, and full stack, backend, full stack. So I have two problems here. The first one is that I'm getting properties that are not default. I just want user-generated properties. So here, no, on directory utils, where I'm filling the properties, I'm gonna filter those who are not is default And the other problem is that it's putting the value instead of the name, like full stack in lowercase instead of the F with capital F. So we can access the row value, the attribute options, and render in a complicated way, but there must be another way. I can actually I think it's better if instead of having like this value, I pass down the row model instead of having to play with the text value. And yeah, let me see if this works better. Instead of having this value, we're gonna pass the row, how do I call this? Row model, which is the representation of the value within a listing attribute. Well, no, row model is not a listing attribute. No, I think we need row with details. Yeah, because we need to render depending on the property type anyways. So there's no shortcut for this. Well, I have a few components that render the specific entity property type that I can show you later. Like I have pre-built components for every property type. But I'm not going to use the default ones because this is a custom implementation to show you how to override them. And then we're gonna use the similar approach, iterate than categories. We're gonna approach similar to the categories, but instead we're gonna have attributes. So this will have space of 4, flex call, and then from data attributes entity, where's my attributes? Oh, I don't have it here. I need to pass it down to my component. Attributes entity with details. And on my response, I'm gonna pass it here. I don't and put it here and iterate all the properties that are not default. And then yeah, I think I need to stop recording because my Mac is super slow. Let's see if Copilot helps me with this. We're gonna fill let's fix the errors at the top. We're gonna map attributes. And then return. Yeah, something is happening to my Mac. As you can see, I didn't do anything and it fixed itself. So for attribute options, we're gonna have if selected attribute name and the current option value. Well, but this applies only for properties that are multi-select or select, where you have options. Attribute is called attribute, actually. No, attribute name. What is this? attribute string directory category. What is this attribute? Should be property with details. Oh, so this function is not existing, is selected, only supports directories. So I'm going to change this to actually I'm just gonna call search instead of using this function. On the categories, I'm gonna change it to search category values, and here I can remove this is selected because it's no longer needed. And we can change this as well to has category option value. And do the same thing for attributes. Has attribute name option, otherwise delete it. And do the same thing for appending if it's not existing. So yeah, this should work, but of course we're not filtering attributes yet, but I just want every attribute to be on the right. Okay, so for full stack, I do have the options, as I said, but for price range, we need to add custom component to filter price range. But let's try with this. Let's click here and try to filter these 8 attribute. So let's see if Copilot helps me with this filtering. So I'm just going to start telling them that filter attribute values. Yeah. And for each attributes entity properties, I'm going to search and add it to the filtered attributes, and I'm going to filter them. But this just filters text values, which will work, but only for this type of property. I need to do custom implementations for the price ranges, number ranges, date ranges, numbers. Let's see. We don't have anything in front end, but we have on backend Svelte, and on full stack we have SaasRock. So now attributes are working. And if we want to add another listing, let's set one of my SaaS boilerplates, view 3. Let's copy the name and put it here. Description. This could be, instead of a text field, we can have like HTML, but for the description, maybe just a text. Like that, and the slug, view 3, SaaS starter kit. And this is on the directory best SaaS boilerplates, category items. I don't have anything for view. Well, I need to actually create another category first. Category value. So I can, let's see if I can edit the current ones. Yeah, no, I think I should add that. I want to modify the framework here, but I can't. So for my frameworks, I first need to add another one called oh, but I can do that if I add it like this. Yeah, category item called view 3, value view 3, order, this will be number 3, and the category will be framework. Well, what is not the framework, is it? Yeah, it is. And yeah, save this and save this to view. It added it twice. And the attributes will be actually another one, which is 19 to 49, and this is front end. Let's just say that. And now refreshing here, we have front-end view, front-end and back-end, nothing, back-end Svelte, and full stack SaasRock. So what if I change yeah, I was going to say, what if I change from single select to multi-select, but I will need to filter based instead of the text value. Well, let's do it. My Mac is behaving a little bit well this evening. Let's see. We need to change on the tenant side, we need to change the property on attributes full stack to be multi-select, just so I can see how it looks. Now, if I select full stack or backend, I don't know if the default should be or and operators, but this is working still because the implementation right now currently has the text value, but I need to update my listings here and edit the attribute for SaasRock and set full stack can be, this is multi-select, but I want radio card attribute property. Instead of combo box, checkbox cards. So refreshing here, I'm gonna put front end and back end. I mean, yeah, all three. Okay, so refreshing on front end, we should have SaasRock because, but it's not filtering. So we're gonna see if this will be a hard one because there are many filters to consider. If the property is of type select, what's it, this error? Yeah, I think it's okay. Is this error? Okay, so instead of doing this way, I'm just gonna put the multiple includes that value, but the multiple contains, it's an object where it contains the value. So I'm gonna map the value to the current value. Let's see if this works. Otherwise, I think I'm gonna implement the other properties. Well, it's working. If it's front end, it's SaasRock. If it's back end, it's SaasRock, and if it's full stack, it's SaasRock as well. And if I select the tree, I think I still have SaasRock. Now, the other listings, I did not update them. Like for example, for Svelte, I need to select one of these because I switch the property type. This is, let's say, front end and back end. And for Vue, let's just put front end. So now, if I refresh, let's put front end. We have the three of them, which is correct. For backend, Svelte and SaasRock, and for full stack, just SaasRock. Yeah. So it's working. Now, I don't man. Man, sweet. Man. Now we can implement the current implementation of Airbnb, but honestly, I don't think my Mac will support more coding. So I think I'm gonna stop the video right here and come back tomorrow with this new step. What we've done is move the implementation of all managing directories, categories, attributes with custom properties for each tenant, category option values, listings, and with auto-generated CRUDs. And we have the filtering working from the database, the attributes filters as well from the database. And what else? And yeah, we're rendering custom properties depending on the type. And I think for tomorrow, we're gonna create a specific listing page and maybe the model for the filters like Airbnb. Instead of having them here, maybe allow the listings to have full width and a button that opens a model that applies to the URL params that filters by range numbers, range dates, strings, numbers, dates, multi-selects, and selects. Yeah, and that's it. How long is this video? So 1 hour. So you can see how with the entity builder, you have a full implementation of the backend. Of course, is not the best implementation like Notion or Airtable, but it's enough for you to keep building your feature like this one. We already have like a full working directory page that we just need to improve on, maybe pagination, UI, UX, more filters, and buttons to say apply, submit or pay to be featured, or even claim. And that will be for tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and as I said, go to producthunt.com/products/SaasRock and click notify me if you want 50% discount on launch day. Thanks. And this is called Iron.